it's an amazing thing to have featured artists on site talking about their contribution to LIGHTSHIPS. And it just so happens that Diontae Simpson is here. His voice is clearly on the album in the track called Dysfunctional Celestial. So we're going to talk a little bit about their collaboration, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you were talking about when you were singing about this Dysfunctional Celestials.
All right.
So I know that from the past work that Diontae has put out that you have collaborated. I'm familiar with Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I have the familiarity with, you know, what the work that you're doing and the creative work that you're doing, you know, from afar. I'm like, man, I wish I had something to offer. So it's always nice to see people like live vicariously, you know, to see what's going on, and it always comes out. Eventually, get to take a listen. So
yeah,
to find out, you know, when Diontae told me that he had a track on your album, I was like, oh shit, really? You just finished, like, you know,
yeah, man,
so much work. So like, talk about how y'all work together first.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, first of all, I met this guy like a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I was just at a buddy's house at a party, and they were like, "Yo, you got to meet this guy. He's a really cool guy. He's a musician, does dope shit." And I was like, "Yeah, he does, in fact, do dope shit." Once I listened to it when we met, man, and it was just like fast friends, man. Like we became instantly connected. Instantly on the same wavelength, same frequency, and then I mean, you know, I showed him my stuff that I worked on. He showed me his stuff, and we both were like, "Yo, we gotta work together. Like it's gotta happen."
I think we met at a time too. Like I was really hungry, for it, because I was like just starting to get back into the music. Mm-hmm. And so I was hungry because that day it almost didn't happen. Like I almost didn't go to that birthday party. I wouldn't have met you that night.
Yep. Because
I remember I was literally going back. If I was with Will, you know Will, and we're talking, and it was almost like a thing, like if I would be able to go or not. But Will's like, "Do you want to go?" I was like, "Yes, bro, I want to go," because I did want to see Anthony.
Yeah.
So I was like, "All right, I want to go," and like I made it happen. Like I wasn't taking no for answer that day. Like low key,
hey,
then like literally bumped into him, and we like clicked instantly. We were just talking about music, and I saw the passion he had for it. I didn't really know exactly what you did with music, but it was just like, you work in music, like, all right, let's collab, let's work together. I was hungry. I was really hungry at that time.
Yeah,
for sure.
And like basically after, you know, a few months of interacting and showing each other's projects to one another, we just started writing music together, and then that's when I right around that time was when I got the studio in Burbank. Mm-hmm. And we started tracking vocals. He just like came through. He's like, "Yo, I like this track. Let me record some vocals on it." And yeah, just his workflow when it came to how he like stacks his vocals and his crafting of vocals and his use of his voice is just mad impressive. So I was like, instantly, I was like, I love working with this guy. He's efficient. He knows what he's talking about. He knows how to do things. And me being really fast on the engineering side of things, it just worked. We meshed really well together because we're both really efficient in our craft, respectively. So, yeah.
So how much of your work, I guess, percentage-wise, has been done, like the creative work has been done in person versus, you know, remotely?
That's a good question, man. I would say a lot. It's actually kind of leaning more towards, especially now that I'm no longer in California, I think we're kind of in the realm of maybe 60% remote and 40% in person. At first, obviously, when we first met, we were trying to collaborate as much as we could because we met during the pandemic, right? So it was like being able to interact in person was relatively limited. But yeah, I think we're about 60-40, 60% remote, 40% in person.
Because he helped me with my first EP, home EP, and I recorded, all of those.
Pretty much every track,
at the studio in Burbank.
Yep.
So
yeah, dude.
Have you ever gotten to a point where like you disagreed on something and just like wanted to move on from it, or was it always continue, like always just cooperation?
I don't think we've gotten to that point yet. I don't think we've had that moment.
It'll come. It'll come.
It may come. It could come.
It might not. You know, I've every single artist I've ever worked with, there's always been a point where we're like, maybe let's move on to another project. Maybe, but honestly, that's super rare. I think especially, and pretty much every artist that I still collaborate with to this day, it's almost never happened with. So, because I feel like, it's not necessarily that it doesn't work creatively between the both of us. It's just that maybe it isn't right for this particular project, right? So like, if we're working on just the home EP as an example, right? Like if there was a track that we're like, yo, this is pretty cool, but it's not right for this album or this EP, let's put it on the catalog, right? That I think is a nice fallback option, because if your flow is, working creatively between the two of you or whoever's collaborating, like there's always a nice fallback of like, hey, let's put it on the music catalog, right? Because then it's there, and then it's not right for this project, but maybe we can get it placed in a TV show or a film, stuff like that. So
this is for you, Jeremy, and especially, I guess it's Diontae's here, but it could also be general, is when you work with artists who come with their own lyrics, do you ever try to influence or help them, to influence them to adjust a lyric or a word or a phrase?
Oh man, it is so rare that I do that. I would say it's, maybe I can count the amount of times I've done that on one hand, because the way I like to work with artists, and Diontae knows this, is like I just let them take the wheel a lot of the time. I think Jack White said it in an interview. He's like, the person who was interviewing him was just like, how do you do it? Like, how are you so creative? He goes, man, I'm just a lightning rod. He's like, I just let it flow through me. And I very much, like, when I heard him say that, I was just like, yeah, that's it. Like, that's how I like to operate, because you're bringing in an artist into your creative world, right? And I think what the biggest pitfall for a lot of artists is that they, this is their baby, this is their thing, right? So they take it very seriously, and it's hard for them to like kind of relinquish control of it. And I feel like that's kind of the beauty of collaboration, right? Like when you're if you watch a jam band like do their thing, like they're jamming, right? They're really feeling the flow. It's not one person is really taking ownership of the whole thing. It's everybody is just kind of playing off of each other's energy. So I feel like I really like to take that approach when I ask artists to be involved on a project. So like I said, if I ever intervene when it comes to lyrics, because like I can write stuff, but like I'm in no way, especially at this dude's caliber, like I'm not a lyricist, right? In the sense that I can like sit there in 10 minutes listening to a track and be like, yo, all right, I got something, like, this guy does that, and I'm just like, I can't do that. So I just relinquish control, and I'm like, you know what, do your thing, man. And then a lot of the time, especially with Dysfunctional Celestials as an example, a lot of the time I'm like, yo, here's the instrumental, tell me how you feel. And then like this is just a general guideline of like this is what I'm envisioning as like a vision board, and then go for it. And I let them run with it, and 99% of the time it's fire. And like, so you
offer that guiding kind of direction in some way. Yeah, like you plant the seed to some degree, but allow it to flourish as it's gonna. And I think that's very helpful for people to be given a prompt. Yep. So the question that I now have that really came from what you said it's for Diontae. Like, how much editing goes into your own lyrics? How many words do you change in phrases, or is it like, no, this is it, man?
Yeah, I think well, like he was saying, when he gives me the prompt, because when you're collaborating with someone, whether it's your project or someone else's, I think more so when it's someone else's project, you really want to come correct, and you really want to do it justice. So I hadn't heard the full album. I've heard a few tracks, none that I can name you though. I've only heard them one pass, right? But when he was describing just the theme of the album, I used that as sort of my guide for the track that I heard, that he was going to allow me to get on. So when he was playing that track for me, I just had a flow, like just it was just like a flow and like a melody that was inside of me, and I'm like, the words weren't there yet, but the flow was there. That let me know like I could hop on this. So I'm like, jokingly, but like I'm like, bro, let me hop on this, and he's like, really? Like, sure, I'll send it to you. And like, I appreciate you for being that way and being so open to collaborate, because like, bro, that's all I want to do. I want to collaborate and create dope art. But as far as like the editing when I'm writing, it just takes time. Like I do take my time. I don't feel like I rush anything. And when I do rush is when I do edits. Like if it's like a flash in the pan, or like that lightning rod, and I just got to jot it down real quick, then I'll look it over, and now I'm editing it as I'm writing, and now I'm putting in the finalized version. Yeah. Like, okay, here's where I'm going with it, but this is what I want to say. Because when you have so many bars, like you got a verse that's normally 16 bars, there's only so much you can fit in there, right? But I think where I've gotten in my craft is trying to say more with saying less, if that makes sense. Like, still making your points.
Yep.
You using less words, though, like, or less sentences, so to speak. So I challenge myself in that regard. Like, how poignant can I be with these 16 bars? Like, I only have 16 bars to deliver. How many messages can I put into 16 bars? And so I just take my time with that and trying to be very intentional. And I think he had a very clear theme for not only that track but the whole album. And I just wanted to, hit it home and like hit that prompt.
You absolutely did.
That's what oddly enough is about. It's like, you get a brief, you get a prompt, like you hit the brief. Brad will tell you, like, you hit the brief.
Yeah, dude. And what I find the most impressive about what you do, and really just vocalists in general, is that lightning rod moment. I think is different for vocalists because, as you know, I'm a drummer. That's my primary musical instrument, drums. And I've been playing drums since I was 8 or 9 years old. So quite a while. And as a drummer, when you get that lightning rod moment, it's very much like it translates from your body to the drum, and that's it, right? But I think with vocalists, what's different is that lightning rod comes out as like gibberish a lot of the time, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, you heard that flow, you're like, oh, I got this flow, I got it, I can get on this, right? There are no words there yet, and you're able to take that and like turn it into something that's substantive and that's digestible. Yet deep, and I that's the thing that impresses me the most about what you do and what a lot of the vocalists I do that I collaborate with. It's just mad impressive the way they do it, man. It's really good.
Well, I mean, I could obviously talk extensively about collaboration, but when I think about what would be a really, I think, a meaningful question, and we did a little pre-conversation about the challenges of working with other people, and I'm not just talking personalities, and I'm just talking about just the basics of follow up and follow through, and how the reliance of a person to move something forward, how they can hang you up, and I've been there. So kind of as a takeaway, if you will, what would you say would be some kind of values to operate by when collaborating with other people? Because I don't think everybody's ready to do it, but I think it'd be good to hear from people who are successful at it. Like, what are some of the values you would operate and tell someone to operate by?
Take the first bit.
Yeah, because my album, I only had 2 features out of 23 tracks.
Hey man, it was a beast. I loved every second of it though.
But I did try to get more. I think.
But wait, you had some production support as well, though, right? Like in terms of the beats, in terms of the music, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the collaboration as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like just a producer putting his beats online for sale, and then me finding them and saying,
right. I think there's a minor collaboration there that might be a good.
Still a little bit.
At least you didn't. If some people want to create the music, they want to do everything, but to be able to do that and find that is kind of the first level into collaboration. It's more passive, but it can become more active as it has, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that with our collaboration specifically, it's because Effortless He was I mean, that was all this dude's brainchild. Like he came up with it, and then he went out, got the purchased beats from the producers, and then did his thing, and mad impressive. Like the thing I'll say about like the success of our collaboration specifically is like, you know, the thing that I would you know, warrant as advice is like, you know, always be open-minded. Yeah. That was, yeah, for sure. 100%. Because like, you know, that's what collaboration is, and you think on the surface like no shit, that's be open-minded, right? That's the whole point. But it's actually way harder like than you think it is, right? Because especially when you have this project, right? Like in the instances where, in my case, where I have this album, I've got this concept, all of the tracks. I mean, before I approached Diontae, Silo Mentality, and now Miguel about being featured on it, all the tracks were done. The only thing that changed after I approached them was the intro track, Pharos. That's the only thing that changed. Everything else was locked in, ready to go, mastered, right? So it's very easy when you're at that stage in your creative project to not want to relinquish control, which is what I talked about a little bit earlier. But you just got to remain open-minded and just trust the artists you're bringing in, right? Like, I trust this dude. Like, I have a track that I love. I don't care if I think it's the best track I've ever made, right? And I send it to him. I'll be like, he's gonna put fire on it. Like, I just know that. I trust him to do that, right? In the few years that we've known each other, that trust has been established, right? Because it's happened time and time again. So you just got to trust the artist you're bringing in, be open-minded, and, you know, always understand that it's an evolving process, right? Is every single collaboration you're going to do be as easy as what we've got? Not necessarily, right? Mm-hmm. I think we got very fortunate when we crossed each other's paths. But also, you know, keep in mind that, like, you know, even though it's not like the easiest thing right off the bat, like, you just got to remain open-minded, and just kind of push through and see the project to the end, right? I think if you collaborate on something and the vibe isn't right, you know, I think it's really unfortunate when that project doesn't see the light of day, right? Because you never know, because you're looking at your project from like a very you know, horse blinded view of, you're like, this is like, if you think it's bad, it's just going to be bad in your brain no matter what, right? But if you see it through and you push through the difficulties of collaborating, because collaborating can be difficult at times, and you see it through to its fruition, and then you play it for someone that's maybe not directly involved. Maybe you play it for a buddy of yours that you're really close with, or whose taste in music you trust, or a family member. You play it for them, and they're like, "Yo, this is dope," and then you hear that, and you're like, "I guess it is dope. Yeah, I guess you're right." You know, and then it turns into this whole other thing, and then it breathes new life into the project. You know, so that's what I would say is just, you know, stick with it, be open-minded. And yeah, just see it through. I think that's a big thing for me. Yeah.
And respect each other's time.
Oh yeah. Respect each other's time. That's
if you get the deadline, like if somebody gives you like even a soft deadline, like I'm trying to have this done by such and such time, like respect it. And if you know that you're probably not going to be able to get it in, maybe you got writer's block or something, like communicate that. Communication.
Yeah, I think right there, I think that's a good way to end it.
Yep.
Communication sometimes means saying I'm not going to be able to meet that expectation right now, but I know that the expectation is there, right? But it's different than if you just completely abandoned your responsibility, and it leaves a bad taste in people's mouth, and you don't want that to happen. So thank you for coming through, man. Absolutely. And, you know, joining us in this interview. Yeah. It's awesome to hear from you, and we're going to talk more about the track a little bit later. All right?
For sure.
Hey, appreciate you, dude.
Good seeing you, bro.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.